This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.
All right. Hello there, everybody. This is Jenny with the Revival of America. Everybody, I'm the owner and the host of the Revival of America. So, for those of you that don't know me, I do spaces here periodically over here on X. I mainly do them on Telegram, or I do my podcast off to the side where it's just myself and the guest one on one. Today, we have Colonel Talnor Watkins in the house, everybody. So, please feel free to request a mic at some point if you have questions for her. We're going to talk a little bit about the fabric of our nation right now. We got a lot of people talking about a lot of noise right now, a lot of surface stuff. So I kind of want Colonel Towner Watkins to kind of talk a little bit about what she does and then kind of go over what we're seeing with this whole trying to destruct this MAGA movement, putting the division in between us. And I'm telling you, everybody, it's real out there. It's really divisive. So I'm going to tell you, if you cannot handle it, get out of it, stay out of it. A lot of it is noise. We have a lot of great things going on that we need to be focused on. And yes, the Epstein situation is something to focus on because it is about the children and all that stuff. But there's a bigger picture here going on that people aren't getting. They're just talking about the surface stuff. They don't go deeper than that to find out what's going on. So I'd like to welcome Colonel Towner Watkins to the stage, as well as Santino. Santino, I'm going to send you the co-host as well. And how are you, Colonel?
I'm great. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Of course, I'm glad to have you. I've been asked to get you on several times. I've just been so busy because I have a day gig too. So I want to say thank you for coming. And everybody here, if you come in late to the podcast or you like what you're hearing, you can always follow the podcast host or go check out the social medias because I do post it all over so people can hear it. We are being listened to in over 100 countries, everybody. So please go follow either the social medias or the podcast host, which are iHeartRadio, Spotify, Anchor, Apple, Google, Breaker, Pocket Cast, Podbean, Riverside, Amazon Music. The social medias are Jenny underscore Jareed right here on X, Jenny Jareed Facebook, at J Jareed Rumble, at J Jareed Instagram, at J Jareed True Social, at J Jareed, the Revival of America Rumble or Telegram. I got a list over here. Sorry, guys. And then the Revival of America over on YouTube. So check out any of those because I do post all of the podcasts over on those locations as well. So, Colonel, what are your what's going on with you? What do you want to share with us that's pretty important? But I also too want to talk about the fabric of what's going on with this nation right now. It's crazy out there.
So, I think what I talk about in Operation Gladio translates perfectly to what we're seeing today. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples of that. But because I've never been on your show before, I'd like to kind of set up. I have a little bit of a monologue, kind of just to introduce people that may be new to Operation Gladio. Um,
Yes,
what
I like that idea for sure.
Okay.
Because a lot of
So,
people don't know about Operation Gladio, and I agree with you. It ties into what we're seeing right now. So yes, the floor is
yeah,
yours, my friend.
it does. Um, so I start off by asking a series of questions, and I will explain why those questions are so important. So, what if I was to tell you that there is an international syndicate that is made up of oligarchs all over the world that origins can be traced back to the Fabian Society, which is a fascist organization that very much rears its head in the forms of things like what we saw or what we've read about in World War II with the Nazis in Germany. What if I told you that the CIA and all post World War II intelligence agencies colluded together to work for not the governments of the countries they're in, but for this international syndicate? And what if I told you that all of the terrorist organizations were recruited by those same intelligence organizations? They were trained, equipped, and paid for by these intelligence organizations to sow the division that we are seeing today. What if I told you that this was all set up and funded by covert operations in drug trafficking, weapons trafficking, and human trafficking? And we refer to that collectively as Operation Gladio, and I can go into why that is. What if I told you that the terror was used to generate fear and chaos, much of which of what we're seeing today, to get people to beg for bigger governments and quote unquote safety? And what if I told you that we didn't win World War II, but we shipped the enemy and shifted from an overt war into a covert war? And those fascists were distributed around the world, not just as scientists, but as terrorists. And that they work stealthily through governments and organizations that we now commonly refer to as NGOs. And what if I also told you that back in the day, the same people that created the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, creating communism, also funded and created Hitler, and largely the same people funded the rise of FDR and his presidency? And what if I told you that the murder of Italian Prime Minister Aldo Moro, the UN Secretary Dag Hammarskjöld, which was also and also the Swedish Prime Minister Olof Palme, Patrice Lumumba, Salvador Allende in Chile, and JFK were all associated with each other, and that this operation is ran out of NATO? And what if I told you that NATO was originally in Paris, and after that machine tried to kill President de Gaulle, who was the French president at the time, over 20 times, they were kicked out of France and moved to Belgium? And what if I told you that same general that was the commander of NATO at the time JFK was assassinated was also the author of Operation Northwood? And he was fired as a result of publishing Operation Northwood. And if you research Operation Northwood, basically it authors and identifies using false flags perpetrated by the CIA to use their trained terrorist network in order to overthrow governments. And that the Cuban exiles who resided here in the United States under the training of the CIA in Operation Northwood was going to be used to bomb US cities, fly drone aircraft into buildings, and sink ships or bomb them, all in order to start a war, a ground war invasion of Cuba. Those same Cuban exiles were implicated in the assassination of JFK. They were found guilty of car bombs, both in New York City and Washington, D.C., one of which killed the Chilean ambassador to the U.S. that was stuck in the U.S. after the CIA overthrew Chile. They were also implicated in the coup against Nixon in the Watergate, and like 3 of them went to jail as a result of that. And they were also involved in the trying to overthrow the government of Nicaragua in Angola in the 1980s during President Reagan. And if all of those things are connected, and you understand that this terrorist organization under NATO has been used to successfully overthrow 90 governments around the world, and they do that through the use of destabilization tactics, divide and conquer. So they are famous for pitting elements of societies against each other in order to orchestrate destabilization. And that is exactly what we're seeing today. You guys see a lot of posts about Karen Bass and her ties to being a communist and traveling to Cuba. During the time Karen Bass, the mayor of LA, currently traveled to Cuba, there was a ban on traveling to Cuba unless you were approved by the State Department. Now, why would the State Department be approving quote unquote communists to travel to Cuba? They did so as an infiltration tactic to gather intelligence. And these same people that are painting her as a communist also admit that her placement in the National Endowment for Democracy, which by the way was also created under Reagan's administration, as basically the second in charge. She also was affiliated with the Democrat, NDI, National Democrat institute under the National Endowment for Democracy, which the National Endowment for Democracy is a CIA front. So she's cleared to travel 8 times as a quote unquote communist into Cuba. She is also placed in a CIA front, the National Endowment for Democracy. And if you think those are not connected, you're crazy. So we're supposed to believe that the CIA is hiring somebody to be in the National Endowment for Democracy that's a communist. That's not going to happen. She obviously has affiliations with the State Department and the CIA because of her travel to Cuba. She would have to have CIA affiliations to be placed in the National Endowment for Democracy. On the flip side of the Democrat piece of the National Endowment for Democracy is what's referred to as the IRI. That is the International Republican Institute. That was ran for 25 years by John McCain. John McCain was the sitting director of the IRI the entire time he was a senator. Now, we already know that John McCain is associated with Ukraine. He was associated with ISIS and the creation of ISIS, which is a known terrorist organization. And I just told you that all of the terrorist organization, and specifically ISIS, was set up as a mechanism for them to orchestrate terror events under the guise of a plausible deniability scenario to divide and to terrorize people in order for them to control people. And one of the foundations of all of this is a fundamental principle. You create chaos to control people. And if you look across the world of things that are proven Operation Gladio events, such as the bombings in the 70s and 80s, and some as early as the 60s in Italy and Germany and France and England and all of the NATO countries. You quickly understand that while Operation Gladio was initially sold to the NATO members fighting as a means to fight communism, you know unequivocally, based on declassified CIA documents and investigations by the government of Italy, that Operation Gladio was used exclusively for domestic terrorism to control the people. And we have experienced our own terrorism here in the United States. And every time we have a terrorist event like 9/11, it is immediately followed by some type of legislation, usually written prior to the event, like the Patriot Act. And it is shuffled through Congress by known CIA operatives. In the case of the Patriot Act, Porter Goss, who was a congressman at the time, was one of the main sponsors of the Patriot Act. And his reward for shuffling it through Congress and getting it put into law, he later becomes the CIA director. None of this stuff is independent of this entire operation or this entire international syndicate. And I use the word international syndicate on purpose because it involves international businesses who control internal operations of countries that they either have investments in or they want control of natural resources in those countries. That can be borne out by one of the initial operations done under this umbrella, which was the overthrow of Iran, of Mossadegh. And it can be illustrated, and we wanted the oil, and Standard Oil ended up with a portion of BP's oil monopoly of the Iranian oil. In the case of Chile, in 1973, there was Anaconda Mining who wanted control of the copper mines. They had the concession, but Allende had basically kicked them out of the country. ITT, which later becomes AT&T, had owned all of the telephone infrastructure of Chile. And so and PepsiCo was involved in it as well. PepsiCo, ITT, and Anaconda approaches President Nixon and basically gets his approval for the overthrow of Allende under the guise that he's a communist, while at the same time later declassified State Department documents indicate that many of the analysts was saying he's not a communist. He may be a socialist, but he's not a communist. And this happened repeatedly. Guatemala, the coup in Guatemala back in the 1950s, was done on behalf of United Fruit. United Fruit basically owned all of the arable or controlled most of the farmland in Guatemala. And the Guatemalan new president was basically repatriating that farmland back to the indigenous people, kind of like what's going on today with China, how we say we don't want China owning our farmland. Well, the United States oligarchs has monopolized much of the farmland around the world under the same guise. And I just find it, not that I think the Communist Party is great in China. I just find it ironic once you understand and know the real history. We in America today are rebelling against the very things that these oligarchs has done around the world in our name. So that's my monologue to start off the show.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Thank you, Colonel. So with that, we're seeing a lot of stuff where because we are battling, right? We are taking down all this nefarious stuff, right? So what do you see here coming? I mean, obviously nobody can predict dates, nobody knows, right? It's going to happen when it happens, but we're seeing a lot of stuff happen, a lot of positive stuff happening, but there's also, you talk about those false flags and things like that. We hear a lot of times that we're going to be seeing a 9/11 event, maybe 10 times worse than that. What are your thoughts on that? Because we know something's got to give here at some point here in the States, or do you just think it's going to continue to kind of go like we're seeing it, and we're going to have these ups and downs, all these confusions? And I would love your thoughts on what you foresee, your opinion in happening here with all the stuff that we're seeing going on here in the next days, weeks, months.
Well, false flags are their modus operandi. The saving grace for us now is most of the infrastructure. I don't even know if I would use the word most. A lot of their infrastructure is being dismantled. And as it's being dismantled, the rhetoric increases. So the dismantling of USAID, for those of you who've not followed me, we've discussed some of the major elements of USAID. One of them was the Office of Transition Initiatives. And that transition, unfortunately, was not to democracy. They destroyed democracies. That office was used to transition countries to fascist dictators so that the oligarchs could go in and control the natural resources in those countries. And one of the examples of that is what we did in the Congo back when we assassinated Patrice Lumumba. And the on another section of USAID was the Office of Public Safety. And I've talked often about the Office of Public Safety. Ironically, the Office of Public Safety taught national police forces around the world, including the Savak in Iran, how to kidnap, torture, and disappear people. That was all done under USAID. USAID was never about aid. Agency for International Development. The international development was oligarchs wanting to develop countries to be proxies of their control. And in each of those cases, there is a methodology that they use to take down governments. And the destabilization is one of those aspects, and generally done through the use of false flags. So it would make sense if enough of this organizational structure is left with the dismantling of USAID. And I would point to you, just because you take down one organization doesn't mean that elements of that organization doesn't go into non-governmental organizations, like true non-government, not USAID, who is a fake non-government because it was 100% government and 100% a front for the CIA. Even one of their past directors admitted that. So the if enough of this structure is left, you could anticipate false flags because that is how they orchestrate coups in countries. One of the other elements of this that you can see playing out today is the use of disenfranchised groups to militarize them, like what we're seeing in LA with the illegal aliens. You also see it in the Antifa style trans that Andy No talks about all the time. Those disenfranchised sub element, those groups are trained and equipped in order to destabilize areas. And we're seeing it play out right in front of our eyes. The problem that most people have is they don't understand the overarching infrastructure because they've never lived in a foreign country and watched it unfold. Now, for me, unbeknownst to me at the time, in 1990, the revelation of Operation Gladio in Italy began the day I was assigned to Italy. I got there on the 2nd of August, 1990. That's the very day that the Prime Minister Andreotti got up in front of the Italian Senate and exposed Operation Gladio. He said what it was. He said that it was orchestrated by NATO and that all NATO countries were involved in it, to include the United States. And it took me about 9 months of doing this research before one day it hit me like a ton of bricks. Hey, we're in NATO. Who's our Gladio people? And again, you see it playing out today in some of these disenfranchised groups being used to orchestrate chaos. And the whole reason they want chaos is so they can implement control.
I agree with you 100%. We're seeing a lot of that for sure. Real quickly, Santino, go ahead and do your magic. Everybody, Santino, let's welcome Santino to the stage. He is the co-host. Go ahead, Santino. Hello.
Hi, hi, Jenny. How are you? Thank you so much for having me up here. Could everybody please, please, please go down to the purple pill? That pill is at the bottom right of your phone. Can you go in there and please like the space, like and share the space? In fact, could you quote and share the space? Get this information out there. The reason why we're doing that is because why have a space when no one's here to share the information and listen to? Thank you so much for having me, and nice to see you, Colonel. And we're having such a great information. Knowledge is wealth. Wealth is knowledge. Thank you so much for having
Of
me,
course,
Jenny.
Santino. And everybody, this is a great space. It's going to kind of take you a little bit away from all the noise out there. A lot of noise being talked about and focused on. So, Colonel Towner, if you're not following her, please give her a follow. She's got a lot of great information. She goes into depth about a lot of things. So, if you guys have a question you guys want to ask Colonel, go ahead. Feel free to do that. And I will request a mic and I will unmute your mic and you guys can chat with Colonel. She's here. How much time do you have, Colonel? I know you have another show to do.
About an hour and 15 minutes.
You got it. Okay, I'm going to keep an eye on that. Okay, so yes, so yeah, we are seeing a lot of that with these illegals and all the chaos that's happening, and I think there's going to be more to come. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with you. The it's like I started off my Air Force career in aircraft maintenance, and it's like repairing the aircraft while you're flying it. And there are historical examples of how this backfires, and let me give you a couple. One of which happened during the Carter administration. President Carter, who, of course, ironically enough, is, and I'm not a Carter fan, don't misunderstand me, but he was the only president that tried to take down the covert arm of the CIA. It was called the Halloween Massacre. And he fired over 800 covert operators out of the CIA. The problem with that was those operators didn't go away. There was almost simultaneously an organization that was set up called the Safari Club. And ironically enough, it was set up in Kenya. And it was set up by a weapons dealer by the name of Khashoggi. And the Safari Club, featuring people like former President Bush Sr., orchestrated the same covert operations out of a different venue until they could make sure President Carter didn't get reelected. Reagan came in and basically regrew the CIA covert operation element. And so it is very, very hard to disassemble something as nefarious as this on the covert side of it. What I have come to believe is that the time between President Trump's first term and his second term, with the information that was gathered during his first term, has done a splendid job of mapping these networks, because there's no other way to explain him being in office and within the first few days of him getting his cabinet members installed, they begin taking down the apparatus, i.e., USAID being the most notable one. So I believe, and there's been drug busts. Most people don't pay attention to them, but the single largest drug bust ever in our history happened in President Trump's second term. And during his first term, there were some notable things that happened, one of which was in 2019. He took down an entire mafia family in conjunction with the Italian government called the Nostra Mafia. That was part and parcel of the covert drug operations the CIA set up in the immediate aftermath of World War II. One of the things that most people don't talk about is the role of Taiwan. Most people think Taiwan has always been a functioning democracy. It has not. Taiwan was a new country that was set up post World War II on an island called Formosa by a Chinese general by the name of Chiang Kai-shek. Chiang Kai-shek was active during World War II. One of his military assistants was a man called Colonel Paul Helliwell, who was a member of Wild Bill Donovan's OSS. And we hear a lot of people talking that Taiwan's going to be the next. You know, we've got Iran, we've got Ukraine going, and then there's going to be something hot going on in Taiwan. It's critical that people know their history. For 40 years after World War II, Taiwan was ran by a dictator that the CIA installed there by the name of Chiang Kai-shek. And the reason they put him there is because he controlled all of the opium out of southern China, Burma, and what would eventually be known as the Golden Triangle. He was set up in operation by people that no one ever talks about, like a guy by the name of William Pauly, who later goes on to be ambassador in a couple of countries in Latin America, who also coincidentally ended up with dictators in charge of them because of coups from the CIA. William Pauly was also intimately involved in Cuba as the owner of the only airline in and out of Cuba. He owned all of the bus transportations, and he also owned a whole bunch of sugar plantations in Cuba, because the drugs of opium transformed into heroin transit into the United States was from Cuba. That was their drug trafficking station. And they processed it by cutting it with sugar from local Cuban sugar plantations. And so, again, having spent 30 years in the military, and I have a master's degree in basically historical military operations, I was flabbergasted, because nowhere in my career was I ever taught that who Chiang Kai-shek was, number one, really was not, this glorious Chinese general who fought against Mao. That's how they paint him. But he was actually a drug trafficker. And that's how he paid for his covert operations in China as a warlord fighting Mao. And we can think that fighting communism is a great thing, but he paid for his entire operation out of opium trafficking. And he came to the attention of the OSS, Paul Helliwell, who picks up the phone and calls Alan Dulles and says, "Hey, I got a great idea. You know that thing that you're setting up under NATO, um, soon to be NATO, out of Europe called Gladio? It was called Stay Behind Units at the time. We could pay for that because no one's supposed to know it exists, so we can't fund it out of actual appropriated funds. How about if we fund it out of drug sales?" And so they set up Shanghai Shek to orchestrate the opium flow into the United States. And when they first started the operation into United States, they specifically targeted places like Harlem and then eventually LA, where the African American population was congregated. And those are all documented to be true. And so it's nefarious at its very beginnings, and it's funded covertly.
And Colonel, didn't they send our soldiers over there to Taiwan to guard their opium fields over there at one point?
So Taiwan itself has no opium fields, but that certainly was the case in Laos during the Vietnam War.
Okay,
And
there you go.
yeah, and Thailand and all of that area over there where they were growing Burma. Yes, that was true. They sent our soldiers over there, and that's the exact same thing happened in Afghanistan. If you look at Afghanistan during the 1980s, when we were supposedly fighting the Soviets in Afghanistan, we were basically orchestrating the movement, because what happened in the late 70s or mid 70s, actually, we pulled out of Vietnam, right? We lost the Vietnam War. Well, if you lose control of the opium flow, you have to have another area where you control it. That's where Afghanistan came in. And if you just, in any search engine, ask for a graph of the opium production out of Afghanistan, you're going to see it rise during the 80s while we were supposedly fighting, or helping fund the creation of Al Qaeda and ISIS in Afghanistan, the war against the Soviets. And that was all part of it. So the opium production in Afghanistan skyrockets right up until the Taliban takes over. The Taliban takes over the government in the late 1990s, and the opium production went almost to zero in 2000. And what happens in 2001? Oh my gosh, a false flag 9/11 happens, and we have to go into Afghanistan. And what happens after 2001 when the Taliban is no longer in power? The opium production skyrockets again.
Wow. Wow. And you know what? You talked real briefly, for those of you that don't know about Khashoggi. I remember that. And that was a brutal, he was an arms dealer. And I remember him, that whole story going over there, and he got brutally murdered. Can you
No,
talk a little bit about on that for those that aren't
well,
familiar with that?
there's two people. Aiden Shikogi was the arms dealer. His nephew is the one that was murdered. And so that's two different people. Kamal Khashoggi was the guy that was murdered, that was supposedly the quote unquote journalist. He was not a journalist. He
Yes.
was a CIA operative, and he was murdered. The interesting kind of anecdotal thing that I discovered is a lot has actually been written about the fact that that murder by the Saudis happened on the 1 year anniversary of the attempted assassination of MBS in Las Vegas, which we all know as the Las Vegas. Um, uh,
Massacre.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a cover for the attempted assassination of MBS. And exactly 1 year later, in because they're like a day ahead of us, in Turkey, he is assassinated by the Saudis. So to me, that was a revenge killing for the attempted assassination. And the arms dealer uncle Khashoggi is in basically every for about 20 years. I said at the beginning that this operation is funded by drug trafficking, weapons trafficking, and human trafficking. So everywhere that we have a war or everywhere we have a destabilization exercise from the CIA in the form of a civil war or whatever, quote unquote, revolution, you have refugees. These refugees are trafficked for whatever purpose, whether it's to flood a country in order to be able to create chaos there, or literally selling people. The baby lifts from Vietnam and many other places all are part of this human trafficking network of desperate people in war-torn countries. And these war-torn countries, in many times, trace the beginning of these destabilizations to these intelligence organizations, destabilizing them so that they can privatize previously government ran entities in order to enrich the oligarchs at the expense of everybody else. Aiden Khashoggi was instrumental in all of this. So if you have a war, you're constantly shipping weapons to a destination. Those weapons, very rarely, 100% of them ever end up at their intended destinations. For example, in Afghanistan in the 1980s, when they were fighting the Soviets, hundreds of millions of dollars, eventually billions of dollars, was in weapons, was shuttled and trafficked through the Pakistani ISI, which is their intelligence organization, into Afghanistan. They were not buying new weapons. They were buying prior Soviet weapons out of Bulgaria, and Adon Khashoggi was instrumental in these weapons deals. They were skimming weapons off the top of actual weapons that end up on the black market, all generating cash. They created an entire bank called BCCI in order to money launder the money from the drugs, the weapons, and the human trafficking. BCCI was created by a guy in Pakistan. It was registered in a European country. I believe it was either Liechtenstein or Luxembourg, one of those two. And its headquarters was actually in the city of London, which we find a lot of this traces back to the
This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.
city of London and MI6. So this BCCI bank grew to be the 7th largest bank in the entire world. And the entire thing was created by the intelligence organizations and people like Bush Sr., Aiden Khashoggi, Noriega, Saddam Hussein. All of the installed dictators were required to have a bank account there because that's how they funneled money around.
Wow. See everybody how entrenched this is? Like people just want instant gratification, but this didn't happen overnight, everybody. So it's going to take a little bit to unwind. And that's what we're seeing right now with the Trump administration and the team behind him. But people just have no patience. And I think they're just focusing on the wrong things. So thank you for that, Colonel. So everybody here, I see some hands that I have requested mics. I've unmuted some mics. We'll go ahead and take some questions for you guys. So please feel free to request a mic. I will unmute it. Santino, did you have any questions for Colonel before we go to, what is it, Ilini, I believe is what it is?
Alina.
Go ahead, Santino. Alina, go ahead, Santino.
You know, I do have a question. I did have a post along a little while back that I posted. Do you know any information or maybe enlighten people about Syria and, you know, Capricorn, the drug, the poor man's drug? Do you know anything about that as well?
Well, Syria is kind of could be its own show. Syria is very interesting just from the perspective of Assad being one of the long holdouts in a plan that Wesley Clark, who, by the way, General Wesley Clark was a NATO commander during one of these operations called the Bosnia Air War. And he made the famous saying that we were going to take 7 countries in 5 years, Syria being one of them, along with Iran. And Syria in the Arab Spring was the long holdout that did not fall to a regime change on that list. And so the CIA had, I mean, they had threw everything but the kitchen sink at Assad. And so it's very interesting to see how that unfolded, because at the end of the Biden administration, they basically just opened the floodgates. They had every single one of their operatives that had been trained, whether it be under the auspices of ISIS or Al Qaeda or whatever, they're all theirs. And they threw everything at Assad during that time. Turkey is kind of the entity that no one ever talks about, but Turkey, their Operation Gladio element was called the Grey Wolves, and they've been instrumental throughout the Middle East in destabilization. Um, it was, most people don't know this, but the attempted assassination of the Pope at the Vatican was done by two Grey Wolf assassins from Turkey. So Syria is one of those. I don't know a lot about their drug trafficking, but it ties to this entire. That's how they generate money, is by trafficking drugs.
Did that answer your question, Santino?
Absolutely. I was just sorry. I just worked out. I'm eating something. Actually, I do have a lengthy post. I'm gonna go fetch it. But yeah. Thank you for filling in a little bit of the dots in there. Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Ellen. What is it, Elena?
Thanks, Jenny. It's Illini. Colonel, I just wanted to come up here and just add a couple of resources to the nest, just to back you up, because there's some really high quality receipts actually that you've got here. So you were talking earlier about drug smuggling out of the Golden Triangle. In 1972, there was actually a Senate hearing where a young PhD student out of Yale by the name of Alfred McCoy basically, gave, his sort of rundown of stuff. He actually kind of watered it down a whole lot. But Seymour Hersh investigated the whole thing, and he actually uncovered, two CIA sources who basically said yes, there is drug trafficking going on, with Vang Pao and some of these, USAID projects, and the CIA is well aware of it, and at a bare minimum, they're indirectly complicit. And probably there's agents, doing it. You've also got Barry Seal later, and then finally, of course, I'm not sure if you covered, Julie Andreotti's disclosures, but that was all reported in the Washington Post. So you've got the New York Times, you've got the Washington Post. There's a lot of resources on this kind of backing everything up. This isn't some, this is actually this is some really interesting stuff.
Yeah, and of course we have all the documentation from the Iran Contra, which not only involved the weapons trafficking of missiles into Iran using Israel as the cutout, but those funds generated from those weapons deals was then used to fund the Contras, which Reagan wanted the overthrow of the Sandinista government in Nicaragua for much of the same reasons that we've already talked about. And that drug operation was documented throughout Iran Contra as well. There is lots and lots of documentation. The problem that I've found, and Illini is well aware of this, is a lot of people have reported on specific parts of this, but very few people have ever scanned out to the 30,000 foot look and looked at it across the globe and realized that it's all connected. And people early on, both in Italy before Andreotti revealed it in 1990, they assassinated any journalist that tried to expose it. They assassinated judges. They assassinated prosecutors that tried to prosecute crimes that involved this network. And that I honestly believe that that was Danny Casolaro when he referred to it as the octopus. I 100% believe, based on his writings, of what he was able to get in print before his assassination, that's exactly what he was revealing. If you go back and read anything that he wrote, he is writing about Operation Gladio.
Wow. Thank you for that. All right, Jersey, your hands up. Go ahead. And then Santino, you can go after Jersey. Go ahead, Jersey.
Hey, hi Jenny.
Hello.
Santino. Hello, everybody. I don't know. I'm just like just listening more than anything. Colonel, I just am so like, I don't know how to feel about today. I've listened to a lot of whining today, and it was like almost automatic. It was just unbelievable how quick they just jump on President Trump. How people can't just for 5 minutes back their president. I mean, we talk about this all the time. We are at war. He has to do some of these things because we are at war. It's like we have to say this daily, and that's so frustrating because there's a lot of lying happening all day long on this app as well. And it's just really astonishing because some people are, it doesn't matter. You're on one space one night and they're this way, and then the next night they're, the same people are going the other way. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm just older and I don't get it, but I don't think so because I ain't that old. But, you know, I've been through shit that nobody has been through with this whole crowd. So it's crazy. It's crazy. But look, you got to pick a side. I mean, most of all, that's what I feel like saying. People need to pick a side. Are you either going to back the president of the United States or you're not? And if you're not, that's fine. Then don't vote for him. Don't vote for him again. Don't vote for him ever. But to not give a person, a human being, the chance. You can't even look at all the great things he's done for us since he got into office. I mean, we're not paying taxes. There's so much stuff, that we maybe somebody could make a big list of everything that President Trump has accomplished, and it's only July. Like this. I don't know. Be careful who you're following. Be careful what you talk about. Sorry,
Georgie,
Colin.
what I
Yes.
would like to add to that is these are agents of chaos. The people that are orchestrating this are agents of chaos. And you're going to see it increase because all of this is based off of emotion. And there has been so much back to the Tavistock Institute, which of course is in London. Um, they have spent billions of dollars on how to orchestrate these operations, and they know exactly how to do it. They know exactly how to manipulate people. You are watching an operation. We are at war, and there is a psychological operation being perpetrated on all of us.
And that is correct. We're going to see it get worse, everybody. So that's why I tell my audience: be careful who you listen to, who you're following, what you're putting into your mind, and if your mind is not strong enough, before you go into these live chats, rooms, whatever it may be, prepare your mind. If you can't handle, don't walk in there. If you're in there, get out of it. Because I'm telling you, I'm seeing a lot of people that have been walking this walk this entire time with us supporting Trump, and then all of a sudden now I'm blackpilled. I'm not supporting him anymore. This, that, and the other. But I think everybody is not getting the bigger picture. They're not going deeper with this thing. Like this thing is like Colonel says, it's an operation. We're not going to get instant gratification. Go deeper. Stop talking about the surface stuff. This stuff matters, yes, about Epstein, but I believe there's a time and a place when this is all going to break loose. And don't forget, we got Russia, Russia, Russia. Now you know what they just opened up a case on Brennan and whoever else. It's out there, everybody. But we're focusing on the Epstein. This Epstein thing is gonna blow up. So is the Diddy thing. Diddy is by far over, but people are just quick to be like, "I'm done. I don't trust them." It's horrible the lack of support now that people are giving Trump because of what has has occurred just within the last 24 to 48 hours. Go ahead, Santino. Go
It
ahead.
is, and I just want to just finish. I just want to say this, that you know what, I'm here to support President Trump. I mean, I think somebody needs to start speaking out loud and proud. I
Amen.
support President Trump, and you know what? Don't react at every split second that he blinks his eyes. He's doing everything he does is presidential, and it has meaning. Everything has meaning with this man. So don't forget that. Thank you for the mic. Love you. Bye.
Love you too, Jersey. Thank you. All right, go ahead, Santino, and then Southern. Southern, go ahead after Santino.
So two things, and I want to circle back to what you guys are discussing right now as well. But the first thing is I want to circle back to the change of power. So a couple of things that Colonel said were actually correct, and it's interesting because I read this post again. It said, "Wow, the change of power in Syria has revealed with beyond a doubt that the Assad clan controlled the country's drug industry and made billions from it." This is just one building in the post near Damascus that has been converted into Capcom factories in recent years. Rebels are constantly opening new warehouses and laboratories for new productions and transportations of pills in areas where it's until recently found under control of Assad forces, BNT reports. The changes of power in Syria has revealed beyond a doubt that the Assad clan controlled the country's drug industry and made billions from it. The discovery of the secret laboratories near Damascus go beyond even the wildest assumptions about the industry's scale on which Capricorn, the poor man's cocaine, was produced. Will the trafficking stop being banned from countries in the Middle East and North America? So it's really interesting about that. But also, just to tap on what you're discussing right now, I did a lengthy thread post about Manson, Charles Manson, and they believe that he was a part of an operation. I mean, he was a victim or what have you, of this. Now, when you talk about, Operation Gladio, Project Helter Skelter, Project Chaos, and Cointelepro, I mean, those are all operations in that umbrella. So I'm going to read this one paragraph that really taps into what we are going through right now. In 1967, the same year Manson was released from prison, the CIA launched Operation Chaos. Its primary objective was to investigate potential foreign influences on domestic protest movements, particularly those in the Vietnam War, and advocating for civil rights, especially the Black Panthers Party. Agents infiltrated various groups to monitor their activities and assess any foreign connections. Around the same time, the FBI launched Cointelepro, which was also targeting the Black Panthers. Cointelepro reportedly aimed to eliminate the groups by baiting them into members, including committing crimes that would make them seem more dangerous than they really were, and turn their supporters against them, weakening their powers. So why I'm reading that out is there is a possibility that some operations, like Colonel said, is happening to us right now. These things, these operations like Cointelepro, Helter Skelter are happening to us right now. So I wanted to get her. I want to bring it back to her, Jenny. What are her thoughts on that? Because that is a very good point. What's happening right now?
Thank you.
So, two things. First of all, I would be cautious when the accusation is made of any government sponsoring illicit drug operations, because the CIA is notorious for deflection. So I just put that out there. Second, the um, all of the CIA operations, they justify, first of all, the CIA is not allowed at all to operate on the US soil. They justified doing all of the operations primarily focused out in California, but it definitely was done in Miami and in many other areas where they are known to have large presence. Um, the entire late 1960s, early 1970s infiltration was done under the guise of trying to root out foreign influence. There was no foreign influence on Americans not wanting to go fight and die in Vietnam when they all knew exactly what was going on in Vietnam. That was a ruse the CIA used in order to orchestrate CIA operations on American soil. And their influence, not only of just and Charles Manson figures prominently during that time, but there are many others like Jim Jones and his operation out in California. He also was in the San Francisco area where a lot of the CIA operations were happening. He was approved by the state of California to be a foster home with a religious group that he began in Indiana. And we are going through a book right now talking about one of his classmates in Indiana by the name of Dan Mederone, who was found later to be working for the CIA in Latin America, teaching them how to torture people under USAID's Office of Public Safety. And he was a classmate growing up. One of his best friends was Jim Jones. Jim Jones founds a quote unquote religious, basically a cult, and moves it out to San Francisco. That cult operated both in Los Angeles and in San Francisco. We found out that, and you can go watch the shows because it was crazy. On Alpha Warriors podcast, there's two, I think, that was done on Jim Jones. He set up Jonestown in Guyana long before he ever moved his cult there. And it was set up originally as a terrorist training camp for the CIA to train assassins in torture techniques to people they were going to use in Latin America as part of a cousin of Operation Gladio called Operation Condor. And Jim Jones was in Brazil at the time that we were cooing that government, along with Dan Mederone, by the way. He's later in Uruguay during training under the Office of Public Safety, their national police force, to torture anyone who doesn't go along with the government there that is another CIA installed government. So all of this, again, all of it's connected. The use of quote unquote foreign influence as an excuse for them to conduct operations in the United States was a hoax. There was no foreign influence of the legitimate Vietnam protesters, but there was an entire operation to discredit them through infiltration that you just described.
Thank you, Colonel. Did that answer your question, Santino?
No, I'm just adding to the conversation, just kind of stimulating everybody's minds.
Okay. No, I like that. Thank you, Santino. Okay, go ahead, Southern.
Hey, Colonel. It's
Hi,
been a
sir.
while. Happy to hear your voice. Um, I went back and looked at what Trump put in place against trafficking, transnational, and all that criminal mess, all the different things that he put in place, and I watched Biden take it down. But we're looking at human trafficking, we're looking at arms, and we're looking at drugs. Is it even possible in the realm of our lifetime that we'll be able to negate those issues or get them in a box? Or is it we just play whack-a-mole the rest of our lives globally?
I don't think you have the golden era of the United States without taking all of that down. So, um, my husband said the other day, and I completely agree with him, that the orchestration of bringing this down, I believe, is the end state is that it's down during the 4 years of Trump's administration. And if you back up what has to be done at year 3 of the 4 years and year 2 and year 1, you are watching the dismantling of all of that. And just like with his first term, it's against all pressure, whether it be judicial or whatever, the use of these illegal aliens for destabilization and division, all of those things come into play. But what's important, and if you don't get lost in the weeds, you see it. The illustration to people that live in America that are glued to MSNBC and ABC and NBC television for all of their news are not going to be able long term to disassociate with the resistance to what we all as Americans embrace, and that is no illegal aliens, stop child molestation, stop child trafficking. Those are things that are globally unifying messages. And I see the counterbalance to those being the goals, and you can't get away from all of us collectively, I mean, not all of us except for the Satanists, believe those are noble goals. And if those are the noble goals of the Trump administration, every single person that rears their head in the whack a mole scenario being against those goals, even the most purveyors of fake news is going to start scratching their head. And we saw that during the first administration. The significant number of previous Democrats that had been lifelong Democrats going, what the hell? Why are people against getting all of the illegal aliens, especially the ones that have raped, murdered, and tortured Americans out of our country? It gets so ridiculous that even the most brain dead people that are, have like an IV in their arm of fake news is not going to be lost on them long term.
I think what we have seen the past couple days from the Epstein, what Pam Bondi came out with, so the case is closed, will not be public, we're moving on, shocked a lot of people on X, and it was high emotional. And people I never thought would come out of their mouth was, "You don't touch children." And it was such an uproar on X. And it was sad to see, but it also gave me hope that at the end of the day, you don't touch children. You don't touch children. And that I am seeing reverberate across X. And that to me is, we're paying attention. We see this and we have to do it ourselves as well. Um, but and I'm excited by that because people are asking, how do I do this locally when I see something? Because sometimes you can call the police, but they're not set up to manage that. You have to know who to call or what organization or whatever to manage this. And those are things that we're researching now so that we can have spaces to educate. When you see something, this is what you can do and be safe while you're doing it. But I do believe in Trump. I do know that he plays 5D chess because he has to. He has good people around him this time. I was very disappointed because he dealt with the swamp creatures, but he knew what he knew and thought he could trust certain people. He came in with a big program. He didn't come in to start the job. He's been working on this job for the past 4 years. So that I'm grateful for. But dealing with human trafficking and drugs. And what's amazing, what I've learned from you, Colonel, is it's amazing how many people it's not. It is not this millions of people that are in our way. It's a core group globally that are the players. And now we're going to end up with their children, and a lot of them are going to be idiots. But the reality of it is, there's still more of us, and we all have to get and participate. And I think we forget that we have that power. And we have a constitution, we have sovereign rights, we have God given rights. And that is something that we're all struggling with. How do we win when this looks so doom and gloom? But I do believe what I've seen in the past 48 hours, people are getting activated because you don't touch children. This speaks to the humanity of the world, and that I am positive about, and I have hope now.
And that's Southern Belle. That's exactly your comment is exactly right. I believe it's bringing attention to it. It's putting eyes on it now where it should have been for a long time, because the children haven't been talked about
Mhm.
for a long time, and this
And
movement.
isn't
And
President Trump pretty?
hang on a second, Jersey. And this movement is about the children, right? So you're absolutely right, Southern Belle. And I think This Epstein thing is not over yet. I think it's going to explode in a way that we don't know, but there's so many other things that are positively happening. I understand, you're talking about the doom and gloom. There's a lot of that going on out there for sure. But people are not focusing on the great things that are happening, like all these letters Trump signed yesterday about all these tariffs that are going to come, due, I believe, August 1st. Like all the greatness, all the crime, the murders that are down a significant number since Trump has been in office. So that's the thing. They're pushing out all the negative. They're just focusing on the negative that's happening, and it's pissing everybody off and giving them that doom and gloom, right? But you're spot on when it comes to that, bringing attention to the Epstein, and you don't touch children. So I'm excited about that too. However, I think everybody needs to go deeper when it comes to stop talking so much about the surface stuff, go deeper, and then maybe people can take a breath. Colonel, did you want to respond to Southern before we go to Jersey?
Well, I find it interesting that I think they found out a long time ago that anything that Trump says that they think is hiding something makes the left energize against revealing it. And I have noticed that the what appears to be stumbling over the release of the Epstein files now has gotten people on the left demanding they be released. And so there's an element of how this is playing out that I think is going to result in, as you said, Jen, some revelations that, and it's going to be demanded not by us in an echo chamber, but from very unexpected people.
And you know what? I think what they've done is they baited him, and they took the bait again. Trump is very good at baiting people, and I believe they took the bait. Go ahead, Jersey, and then Sapphire, you can go. How you doing on time, Colonel?
I'm fine for about 10 minutes.
You got it. Go ahead, Jersey.
Okay, I'll be quick. I just wanted to say that we are actually living the art of war. I mean, like I said, Trump knows every move he's making. And even though we all want to scream all day and whatever, everybody's got the right to do it. I mean, sometimes people just don't understand. But, I mean, it is the art of war. And we have to give it that 72 hours to figure things out. There you go. That's all.
Thank you, Jersey. Go ahead, Sapphire, and then Texas Annie, and then Health. You can go. Go ahead, Sapphire.
Hey, Jenny. Thank you
Hello.
for letting me up. And I wanted to tell you a miracle that happened today, being that my father was an Army man. Colonel, thank you for your service. My father was able to get through Neptune Society, which is an international burial services. Today I got his ashes, but I cried because they surprised me with a veteran folded flag, and they said all I needed to do is get the triangular frame for it. I was just so touched. I was so touched because they weren't going to give him one. And the process, even though he got a GI Bill, he was never in battle. He was only almost in battle. So I told the burial services my dad's story that he was during JFK. And during JFK, there was the Cuban Missile Crisis, that he could have been either killed or maimed, and maybe I wouldn't have been born. And they had that surprise for me today. It was
Oh,
so beautiful.
oh,
It
I'm
was
so happy
so
for you,
beautiful.
Sapphire. Oh, that's a great story. Thank you for sharing that. I know this has been a hard time for you, mamas, but I'm giving you
Thank
big
you.
hugs, my friend.
That's
I did want to share with you guys what's very interesting. While I was over there, I was looking in the car at different things. And now Roger Stone is going after Steve Bannon. Elon Musk is going after Steve Bannon. And what we know about Steve Bannon is he's the one that did a recording that he was going to make a mini series out of, called The Monster, or The Monsters, about the Epstein Island, which is very interesting that he actually met up with, what's his name? Jeffrey Epstein both in the UK and the US. Some very, very interesting stuff, guys. The other thing is, guess who is absolutely freaking out and saying that oh gosh, that someone has to turn over the files on President Trump being on Epstein Island. Jasmine
Yeah, I was
Crockett,
gonna
you
say
guys.
Crockett and what's Swalwell? Swalwell, those two
Yes.
Fruit Loops.
Out of all the people, swallows well. I call him swallows well.
That's funny, Sapphire. All
Probably
right,
needs
go ahead.
water.
Go ahead, Texas Annie.
I thank you for letting me come up, May. That was awesome. I'm so happy for you that you got your papa's flag. That means a lot. What I wanted to say, hi, Colonel. Thank you, Jenny and Santino. What I wanted to say was at first when Bongino and Cash came out and they expected him to talk about Epstein. They both look like the cat that swallowed the canary when they said Epstein didn't kill himself. It's like, they're lying, and it was hard for them because they couldn't stand to say that, but they look like a cat that swallowed a damn canary. It looked too funny, like, oh, you're bullshitting me. But that's all. I laughed when I heard them say that, actually. Thank you.
Thank you, Texas Annie. I did not see that. I'll have to go check it out. Go ahead, Mr. Health.
Hello, how y'all doing?
Hello.
How are you? What's up, Santino? And of course, how are you, Miss Colonel Town? You know I'm here for you. I just love when you speak. I follow you all the time, and you just be my calm through the storm. Like the knowledge that you provide, and it's just like you and the numerous amount of other people on this app. You help me, really just look at the nonsense that's being spit around and on this app, and just look at them as just like fools. Like it really never like does nothing to me. So I just love when you speak. I just love it, and that's why I'm here. I wanted to come up and just say hi. You said you was about to leave, and that was it. I just wanted to give you your flowers and thanking you, Jen, for even holding this space. It's a great space, and just letting y'all know you got people like me who wasn't even really into politics, and I've just been in these politics for the last, I say, year and a half, 2 years, and I mean, you can call me a Trump tard, or a Q tard, or Anon tard. I don't care. I've been researching knowledge, and I know what I'm seeing, and I know what I'm feeling, and I know what's going on. And this man is doing what's supposed to be done, and it's all lining up. So I'm a big, document studying the finance system. So when I'm looking at what we learn in my finance classes, and is the documents that we're reading, and what's lining up to what's really going on, and the moves that Trump's making, I know all this is real. So I just wanted to thank you for what you provide, Colonel. It just opens me up and makes me know that, these people are playing games that's on this app. And so why do you trust Trump and this and that? Or, so what do you, Trump, is he a savior? It just makes me sick. And these people, most of them don't even be from our country. So it just make me look at people that roll with these people who are from our country. I'm looking at them sideways. So thanks again for the positivity and the good stuff that you put out in the atmosphere, and I'm catching it. I thank
Thank
y'all
you.
so much. Thanks for letting me speak. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Health. We love you. We love always seeing you in these spaces. All right, Colonel, you got time for one more from Southern?
One more.
All right, go ahead, Southern.
Colonel, watching what's happening right now politically with Elon Musk, how do you see that playing out? I checked. He has not filed for a new party status, but how do you see that nonsense out there impacting going forward for 2026 and 28?
Well, obviously, what that did was expose people, the normal people that we would expect to gravitate toward a third party. Um, it just seemed to me to be an exposure operation.
Yeah, something's not quite right about that. That's just something odd. It didn't click. Everybody's freaking out about it. And I'm like, he has not filed for a new party status. The only thing he's been concrete about is he would support certain types of candidates. That's what he did to help Trump get elected. But a lot of people are freaking out about it. They feel like it's going to break up MAGA and MAHA, where we've come together. But I don't understand what Elon's trying to get out of this. I'm not sure.
Like
But
I believe
is he?
he's playing on people's emotions, and I do believe that we are in the exposure stage of all of this, everybody. So definitely pay attention to that, because people, even here on X, and other places, Facebook, whatever, a lot of these fake influencers slash podcasters are being exposed. The more they talk, the more they expose themselves. So pay attention to that, everybody, because we're seeing that in real time. So, Colonel, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to get you back on, because clearly you have, I mean, I've listened to you. You have a lot of great information, and you kind of help set it straight from where maybe people are talking about it on the surface level, right? So, if you are willing to come back, we'll get you scheduled back.
Absolutely. And I do want to just say that so much of what is going on today has long tentacles in history. And if you understand the history of that, we were not taught, by the way, um, a lot of the exposure of what is going on. If I would have 2.5 years ago, with the knowledge that I have today, had ticked off a list of things that needed to be exposed, it would be as if Trump is going down country by country by country, exposing operations that have gone on for the better half of the last 80 years. And I could not be more thrilled with the progress of that exposure. And there are many legitimate people that are being implicated. And I would just point to how all of us have said we need more information. And then you have people that provide information, like Tucker doing the interview with the Iranian president, and everybody gets up in arms about, oh my God, we don't want that information. And it was the same thing that happened when Tucker interviewed Putin. Oh my God, you can't talk to him, because every single person that he is talking to is exposing a segment of our history that has been hidden. And if you use that as a tool to do research in the areas that are being exposed, which we have done for the last 2.5 years, there it would be my list of exposures that we have worked diligently to prepare the people that have been with the Alpha Warrior podcast that we do on a weekly basis, and in my 4 o'clock shows. That, by the way, if you're new, I have a pinned post, all of my previous, like, hundreds of hours of tutorials on the history of Operation Gladio, Operation Condor, this international syndicate where we name names, um, of the oligarchs that have been controlling our foreign policy to enrich themselves, while sending men and women of the U.S. military to die in foreign countries for their enrichment. And I can't be. I did want to mention one thing that didn't come up, that people can go do their own research on, and that is an organization called Crypto AG. Crypto AG is a fascinating historical element to all of this, and it never gets talked about. It was um, a company that was formed. It was actually formed, the guy that did it was active during World War II, selling encrypted devices to foreign countries, that was under the auspices of the NSA and the CIA, as well as the German BND. And Trump dismantled that company in 2020. And so, again, that was used to spy on all foreign governments. So every single time the CIA played like they were ignorant and they didn't know something was happening, you know that it was a lie if you understand the history of Crypto AG. That those instruments were installed in 120 countries around the world, thinking that they were buying from Switzerland, which is where they set up the company, and that is not without being a purposeful guise to say that it was an impartial company under an impartial, non-aligned government so that other countries could trust the source of that encrypted device. It had a back door. And the CIA and the German BND, which is the equivalent of the CIA, who, by the way, was set up by a Nazi, Reinhard Gehlen, who was the Eastern developer of the stay behind units we now refer to as Operation Gladio. So it was an instrument for the CIA to know everything that was going on around the world. They were not surprised by anything. And if you understand that that was set up in the aftermath of World War II and was carried forward all the way to 2020, you begin to go back and question everything about every government quote unquote surprise that happened that the CIA tries to profess that they were caught flat footed about. They were not. They used that in order to manipulate foreign governments. So I strongly suggest people do a little research on that company. And that's all I
Thank
got.
Thank you, Colonel. Great show. Thank you for being here. And everybody, Santino, thank you so much. We'll be back next week for a couple X spaces. So watch for the schedules, everybody. If you want to come back and check out Captain Kyle tomorrow, he'll be on my Telegram page at 5:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then Dallas from PPN, he'll be over there at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. So with that, everybody, God bless you all. I'll see you in some of these spaces or over on my Telegram page tomorrow. And Colonel, once again, great show. Thank you so much for being here. I will get you back on for sure.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. God bless everybody. Have a great night. Thanks, Santino.
Always.
This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.